Hey, welcome to Head Chicano In Charge 10. Given my undiagnosed ADHD, the fact that I've been able to put 10 of these together is quite an accomplishment, at least for me anyway. And as always, thank you to those of you who continue to lie to me, saying that the podcast is good and I should continue. Thank you. I appreciate it. Keep on lying to me. I'm eating it all up. Um, Before I begin, I need to apologize to anybody and everybody who has seen or will see Chicano In Charge 9. I can assure you that I have hired a coordinator to make sure that my shirt is buttoned at all times. I apologize once again for that. Now, here, I'm getting my notes together because I cannot do this ad lib. Okay. Also, I do not necessarily remember nor care to keep track of things I may have mentioned in previous podcasts. So that means sometimes I will end up repeating the same thing maybe over two or three different podcasts. Uh, que no se preocupen. Don't worry. I'm not in the early stages of dementia. It's like I said, I'm too lazy to keep organized and keep track of what I say or do. Uh, let's see here. Okay. My podcast is recorded on Riverside FM. Now, I like this platform because all I need is a mic, a camera, and a computer, and I start talking. It has great editing capabilities, I'm told, but as I've repeated over many times, I just want to be someone who talks. I don't want to be an engineer. I may eventually learn how to edit because it seems to be in my best interest to do that. But right at the moment, I appreciate the fact that basically, as far as I'm concerned, Riverside FM is just a point and shoot. Hey, turn us on point, turn on the camera, make sure you set everything up. This is the second time I'm doing this particular podcast because the last time I forgot to tell the computer that I was using my microphone and it didn't copy it. And of course, it doesn't read my mind and reach out and say, hey, dumbass, pay attention. So now I'm having to learn to do that. Now, there are two things I want to bring out. Uh, Caveats, I guess. One is Riverside FM sent me this pleasant little email that said, hey, I can make some passive income. Basically, they say I have a particular unique ID code, and if I can get you people to sign on to Riverside FM and use that code, they will send me money because you guys are using it. So should you decide you want to do your own podcast, please let me know. I will send you that ID. I'm not against making money, but that's not what I'm here for. And the other one is this: the first 8 podcasts were done free. Riverside FM says, hey man, the first 2 hours are on us. Check it out, see what you think. So I have used up the 2 hours, and so I have subscribed to the monthly app or the monthly program, and that's 5 hours a month. Now there's an inherent problem in here in that it took me 4 months and 8 podcasts to get through 2 hours. If I'm going to get my money's worth, that means I have to knock out 5 hours a month. I'm not exactly sure I can do that. However, I have a second podcast going up later this week entitled Head Chingon In Charge, and it will be purely political. And with all that's going on, I will be talking all the time. So I guess I will get between Head Chicano In Charge and Head Chingon In Charge, I will get through the 5 hours. Now, I put that out. Let's see what I was going to talk about. Okay, let's see here. Okay, I want to talk about certain aha moments. And I know that gets used up a lot, but when I talk about aha moments, they really are that. They're like those moments. I still remember them. They come together and it's like it brings these different things, and it's like, oh, that's how that works. And I have a few of them that I can remember, and they don't have to be profound. It's not a serious thing. It's that you have them and you remember that you have them. Uh, as an example of the not profound and sort of almost silly, as I mentioned earlier, I grew up going to Catholic school. And I'm a good Catholic boy even now. And as a result, when we guys would get together to talk about girls, let's say through the eighth grade, I didn't know much, but I knew enough to know that whatever my friends were telling me is they were full of crap. They didn't know what they were talking about either. So anyway, you catch all this silly juvenile nonsense. You find out someone points out I'm even embarrassed to say it, a Kotex box, and you go like, oh, acting like you know what they're talking about when you really don't. Then they get to high school, and because I didn't really have any sisters around me. So, I didn't catch up to all the stuff that went on. If you guys had sisters, I didn't know about that. So now I'm reading about, monthly this and monthly that. And I'm like, oh, and then you get these juvenile jokes about, yeah, they're old enough to bleed, they're old enough to butcher. I do remember that one. It was like not quite figuring out yet what it meant. Anyway, I am now 19 years old. I remember that much. I'm at Fort Hood, Texas. No, not Fort Hood, Fort Lee, Virginia. And I'm walking around with a friend of mine, Robert George. We're going towards the barracks. And as we're walking, this thought hits me, and I blurt out, oh shit, that's what they're for. And Robert stops and he looks at me and he goes, what are you talking about? And I looked at him and I said, oh, I just figured out what a Kotex is for. I'll never forget. He looked at me, he laughed, and he did get around to saying, Reyes, you're dumb shit. And we moved on. But that was an aha moment. All those things finally came together and I realized, oh, that's what a feminine napkin is about. Okay, that was an aha moment. Now, there were two other aha moments that I'd like to talk about. Both is I just graduated from Cal State LA. One of them is went to a bilingual teaching conference in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I got to meet Chicanos from all over the country coming in. And I remember I was particularly caught by the college, University of Illinois at Urban Circle. I just thought, wow, man, Urban Circle just sounds so neat. And I got to meet a student from there, a graduate from there, and we were talking. And I asked him where he was from, and he told me Chicago. And he asked me where I was from, and I told him, I went East Los, the typical East LA arrogance. And he looked at me and he smiled and he goes, don't tell me. East LA College and Cal State LA. And I looked at him and I said, yeah, you're right. And he laughed. He goes, he says, you East LA Chicanos, you're so provincial. You never leave. And I thought about that because he was right. I mean, all these years later, I may be 16 minutes further east than I was growing up. But it's like, as an East LA Chicano, why would you want to leave? You never had any conflict about being who you were. You never had to put up with all that nonsense. Anyway, at the same time, I get a job working for this outfit that probably no longer exists, Sutherland Learning Associates. And they were in the process of competing for a contract for for a school-based curriculum. And they were creating this social studies, a culturally diverse social studies curriculum. And I got hired on as a researcher, basically find facts, do this, build this up. But as the project went along, I was given the task of developing families for the curriculum, And the first family I developed, of course, was a Mexican American family. And I gave them a history, all the things that go with having a family. And I remember they brought in a consultant, an educational consultant, another Chicano, and he liked what I did. And basically what he said, what he did to to in his mind make it right for him to take the money is he created a more specific pass for another family member. We did this with an African American family. When I found out that I placed someone working for the post office a little too early, but the guy liked everything else I did. And then we had to deal with a Native American family. So I went to visit a Native American consultant, and it was a woman whose name I've is long forgotten in my mind. I mean, I wasn't that important to her, so she probably forgot me as I walked out the door. Anyway, we were talking about what I was doing, and she looked at me and she asked me, she goes, "How do you identify?" And I told her, I said, I identify as a Chicano. And she looked at me with a smile and she said, "You know, you Chicanos, you Mexican Americans," she goes, "we have such a hard time getting you guys to understand that you really are native. You're Native Americans." And I remember we discussed it a little, and I sort of like the idea because, you know, I look at, hey, Mexicans are a combination of Europeans, basically the Spaniards who came in, and the indigenous of Mexico. You know, the only problem is we can't trace a tribe, so we can't sit there and say, "Hey, I belong to this group." But you know, it made sense to me. So, given that thought with what my compadre from Urban Circle said about us being provincial, I've come to the realization that, and I don't mean this as a stereotype or as uh, a, a slur, but I am a reservation Mexican. Okay, I'm a reservation Chicano. I feel comfortable being in the area where I was born and raised. You know, I've never felt I had a need to go move to some area. I mean, like I said, I'm further out from East LA than when I grew up, but to me, it's still the place I call home. I go to work on the other side of town, and many a time when I'm coming home, I will detour out of my way just to roll through Boyle Heights and East LA just to get a feel of the ground beneath me. You know, every now and again, because they're still there, I go by the houses where I was raised and I get a chuckle because all those old memories come back to you, you know, all the things that make us who we are. And those are my aha moments. Thank you once again for popping in on me. I hope to see you next week because, like I said, I got to put a lot of these bad boys out if I'm going to be paying for 5 hours a month. Once again, thank you all for joining me. Take care.